to National Geographic explorer and Bob Ballard.
More than 5,000 years ago, man braved the open seas of Indonesia in tiny fishing boats known as jukuns. Today, you can still see the same ancient vessel challenging those waters. Englishman Bob Hobman is something of a jukun junkie. Recently, he rallied a spirited group to make a grueling voyage from Bali to Australia. Like the seamen of old, they had nothing but the wind at their backs to usher them along. But what began as a passage across the sea soon turned into a rite of passage.
In the shadow of the sacred Mount Agung, in the ancient land of Bali, the spirit of a tree is released. In time, a new spirit will inhabit its hollowed carcass, the spirit of a living canoe, the jukung. Seafaring has been a way of life in this island nation for thousands of years. But even here, they've never seen quite so much boat-building activity.
Ya, bagus. Kasih tutup sekarang dia.
Every woodworker, painter, and master craftsman in the village of Padang Bai is busy building jukungs, traditional outrigger canoes. For a race is being planned.
And the people whose voyage we are recreating, even though it's a symbolic way.
Race organizer Bob Hobman, a British author and adventurer, is a man obsessed with the sea, obsessed with the ocean voyages of the ancient Indonesians.
We're about to just upgrade them a little with the great jukung race. Thank you very much.
Yeah, straight at you. Once you're up, you're fine. Oh, grandmothers can do this here.
In 1985, Hobman sailed from Bali to Madagascar, 4,000 miles in a dugout canoe. Now, he's putting together a 1,400-mile voyage from Bali to Australia, recreating the daring journey of the Austronesians, early adventurers who braved the open ocean to reach the land down under.
My dream is to share as much as I can my passion with the Austronesian people and their boats and their journeys and their spirit of adventure.
Hobman has gathered 9 teams of volunteers from around the world and brought them to his home here in Bali. They're enthusiastic but inexperienced, and somehow Hobman will have to train them for the challenge ahead, covering vast distances of open ocean in tiny vessels. Under his tutoring, they'll practice for a month before the race begins in earnest.
That's it, lovely, lovely. Yeah, now paddle now, paddle.
Everyone thinks I'm crazy to take 16 Westerners used to the luxuries of life and turn them into a group of ancient sailors.
And leave your sheet until the last moment and fall off. Come on, put your shoulders into the paddling. It's a lot easier afterwards.
Bob has taken these sailors from America, France, Japan, all over the globe, and like a latter-day Noah, he's paired them off 2 by 2. They must learn to work together as teams. They're a young, strong-minded group, not shy about challenging their partners or their leader.
I'm not sure why Bob wanted mixed crews. What did he want the women along for? To look pretty or calm the men down? I really don't know. In every single case, the male half of the crew was nominated as skipper. That was challenged by the American crew, and Catherine, in fact, became the skipper.
Why are you the captain?
Because I'm bossy.
Is that just typical of American women, is it?
They like to take charge.
I got the paddle.
That's it.
I'm still the captain. You're the crew?
Yes.
Well, I trust him very much in sailing, and he knows what my capabilities of sailing are, and with that we're rather equal. And all the other things, well...
We have our problems, we had our problems, and we will have them, and it's just the same.
So...
Over the next few weeks, the sailors get a hint of the danger to come, the emergencies they'll have to cope with.
We've had a capsize already, and it took 7 of us to get the boat back, and that was in calm conditions, and I think with just 2 of us, we wouldn't do it. Hopefully Jukuns will stay together, then we get a bit of help, but it'll still be very difficult.
The people of Bali believe that prayer can spin a cocoon of safety around a fleet, and the Westerners want all the safety they can get for their dangerous voyage. Led by one native sailor in their group, they join together in an ancient Balinese ceremony.
The crew were married to the boats, and the boats were married to the sea. Every 15 days, the living canoes are blessed. The eyes seek out the demons of the deep.
That's Thru, the rice goddess. It'll bring them good fortune.
And on a cool October night, 9 Jukuns are launched into the dark waters, beginning a journey that will span 7 weeks and 1,400 miles, an odyssey over the most treacherous of seas.
Unbelievable, it's empty, look, nothing left.
Yeah.
Empty beach, fantastic.
What lies ahead for them now?
Woo, God knows.
For the first few weeks, the fleet will make its way along the Indonesian archipelago, hopping from island to island. The final leg of their trip will take them across the Arafura Sea, which separates Indonesia from Australia. Early on, the crew senses the magic of these delicate Jukuns, giant bamboo water bugs that glide over the seas.
The Jukuns carry some life, some spirit that conventional Western boats seem to have lost in the fiberglass and steel.
This is sailing at its best. It's, you know, the absolute heart of sailing. I think everybody's loving it.
I just suddenly felt that everybody was getting to be like sailors, because there's always that common bond on the sea. It's the greatest equaliser of all. It doesn't matter who you are or how much money you have, you're all equal on the sea.
Bob Hobman is keeping an eye on everyone from Mission Control, his yacht.
It looks like the longboat's got you in its grip still, is that right?
I'm stuck on the mothership Allegrius playing Admiral. I keep a daily radio schedule, I sort out the food, and I'm trying to write a book all at the same time.
The first days of the trip are relaxed, and thoughts of racing are soon forgotten when the crew gets a glimpse of the spectacular scenery and culture of these Indonesian islands.
They're surprised when they see Balinese Jukuns here, but when they see orang putih, white people sailing them, they're just amazed. All along the coast, we've been welcomed as seafarers. We're Orang Lao, people of the sea.
The crews have something to learn from each other as well.
Yeah, bagus. I teach Japanese and him, and he teach me Indonesian. Very difficult and help English. Why help me English? He speak English a little. I speak English little. Very smooth communication.
Day 10. The boats reach the island of Komodo.
What a foreboding island is Komodo. I couldn't think of a more appropriate place for dragons to live. They've been here since the last ice age, separated the eastern islands from the rest of Java and the rest of Asia, so they're terribly ancient. They're prehistoric creatures.
There's still the harmony among them.
Yeah, they seem to build the pyramid and have a hierarchy. Yeah, and someone watches.
Yeah, they're sort of
standing
guards.
Yeah.
A pair of nice legs.
They eat people, you know. Now, they're having goat for lunch, but I don't think we'll hang around to see what they're going to have for dinner.
The sightseeing is enjoyed by everyone, including Bob. But as day after indolent day goes by, he starts to get concerned.
Well, the first week and a half have been idyllic, too idyllic perhaps. I would like them to become more independent and learn how to survive, because there's every possibility on this trip they might have to.
Bob would like the crews to buckle down. This is supposed to be a race, after all.
Seems like the only creatures that are interested in racing are the hermit crabs.
The crews, however, are increasingly tired of Bob's insistence on competition.
And we've got a long way to go with the Jakungs now. There's no question that they're fragile, but I still think that to press a boat that hard through those seas for 9 hours is not really very good.
It is really terrible. You can hear them crying, these boats.
Bob wants us all to race because that's how we got the money together for the expedition. Bob promised them a race.
Like pushing the people to fight against each other.
I haven't understood until yet what the point is to make a race. Why it is so important for you?
Everybody moving with the elements races, of course, because competition is what our civilization's all about, what all civilizations have been about.
A lot of us don't believe in nationalism because it's a sentiment that leads to war and divisiveness, and we don't want to highlight the division between us. We want to highlight the togetherness of this group.
Everybody races, everybody races. Everybody is competitive, my dear. Everyone in this world.
Don't mind
the whole of history, everybody is competitive.
They don't race to Queens and Padang Bai.
18 people are about...
Not much.
18 people are about to set out to
Don't you tell me they don't
That
race
is not
to
the case.
Queens and Padang Bai. We wouldn't be here unless the whole thing was called a race.
As the days wear on, the tensions between the group and its leader continue to grow.
I'm afraid dear old Bob is separating himself from the Jakung sailors. It would have been better, right from the beginning, for him to have been on a Jakung and sailing with us.
He's a dreamer, an artist, and I think a wonderful man. This trip wouldn't have happened without him. But I do understand that he irritates a lot of people and they feel very angry towards him. That is something that's becoming a big problem on the trip, because perhaps his dream isn't being realized.
I think everything would be different if there wasn't the Allegrius there with all these luxuries on board.
This is a bloody old fat boat with people in. They are drinking wine and they have good food and they can good sleep and then they are dry, and we are sitting here outside and have to follow this fat boat.
It's lovely and cool in the cabins. It's perfect. You know, what a treasure. You know, there's wafts of freshly baked bread coming out of the portholes. The odd cocktail being consumed on the deck, and there is a little bit of disgruntlement in the air.
The expedition is beginning to face physical strains as well.
The heat could well prove to be one of our biggest problems. It's grinds you down sort of heat. It's almost unbearable.
Everyone preferred to go to a beach where there were no trees and sat out all day in the sun, and until one finally collapsed, and then everybody got up to move. I mean, it's really slow behavior.
I felt it a bit already when I came up.
It's a problem. It's not great, but it's an infection, and that is very dangerous, I think. There's too many complaints. It's like somebody described it as a wimp's holiday in paradise. I'd hate it to turn into that.
But this paradise, lovely as it is guarded by dangerous swarms of wasps. Bob radios back an alarming report.
The Great Jukung Race Expedition faced disaster when crews weakened by fatigue, stomach ailments and infections were attacked by a swarm of wasps on the Flores coast west of Malmary.
Oh, my head is hurting so much. And they were all on my head, like 50 or 60 of them.
Fast action by film and support crew probably saved the life of Dutch crew Ian Bolsens, 26, and New Zealand male crew member Simon Kerslake, 25, stop. Both received more than 30 stings from the dive-bombing wasps, whose sting produces instant muscular contractions which can cause respiratory failure. Stop. Usually 3 or 4 can kill, and a child or somebody in bad condition, which our crews aren't right now. It's the 17th day. They haven't been taking it very well at all. I don't know whether it's nutrition or the fatigue that gets built up with day after day, sitting bolt upright in the blazing sun in the little canoes. Boy, yeah, they just attacked the whole cab. And they're faster. They're fast and they're aggressive. Just...
It's like a military operation.
If any army ever managed to employ them, they'd win any war.
We'll return to National Geographic Explorer after this.
Movies with the capital, yeah, TBS.
Plymouth Acclaim has more interior room than Honda Accord and Toyota Camry. More rear seat legroom, a more powerful engine, better rust protection, and a longer powertrain warranty. Yet it costs $1,500 less. How can we charge so little? How can the others charge so much? Acclaim from Plymouth.
Next Sunday, there's a killer wave the Chinese call the Silver Dragon, and a man you'll call crazy when he dares to surf China's Great Wall of Water on Explorer. 9 p.m. Eastern on TBS next Sunday.
America has always demanded a lot from its forests. Wood for millions of new homes, and billions of tons of paper. The good news is today we have more trees than we had back in 1920, thanks in part to something our forest products companies do 3 million times a day: plant a tree. Help manage the future of America's forests. Call the American Forest Council.
You're watching National Geographic Explorer.
If you're curious about the ways of the universe, want a colorful, more exciting life, and are interested in exploring what the future holds in store for you, you should be reading Omni magazine. There are articles that can improve your life.
I can create my own dreams.
Reports about scientific breakthroughs.
Actually talk to animals.
And tips on how to access tomorrow's technology today.
Take it from me.
Omni magazine. Tomorrow's mind style for today's world.
Why are we so hard on ourselves? When we created our original macaroni and cheese recipe, we insisted on aged New York cheddar. Milk delivered fresh each day, and our own homemade noodles curved just so to hold the rich cheddary goodness inside. 35 years later, we still insist on all these things. Why? Because we're Stofers, and people expect us to be better than the rest.
At Thru, we take pride in helping those who seek to preserve our nation's beauty, for all of us to enjoy. Thru, your partner in preserving America's natural heritage.
Box seats for when?
We interrupt this purchase for a reminder. The Discover card actually pays you cash back for every charge. It pays to Discover.
And now back to National Geographic Explorer.
Eventually, the besieged crews get a respite. For a while, the seas turn calm. But the serenity is short-lived.
In my experience of the sea, it turns it on just as you relax, just as you start to get comfortable, and it's the change of seasons. And when it changes here, things get very, very violent.
The team decides to take no chances. They pull into shore just in time to escape the coming storm.
It's a very nasty reef.
These water spouts, if you were unlucky enough to have one pass over you, it'd just rip everything off your jacung, your sails, everything. You'd just be left swamped.
This is all beginning to happen now. I mean, the next 4 or 5 days are going to be very interesting, I guess. A lot of these guys not having seen this yet.
Up ahead lies the ultimate test for the jakungs, crossing the dangerous waters of the Arafura Sea. It's 250 miles of open ocean from Indonesia to Australia, and the crew's mood turns nervous and grim. Though they may be at odds with Bob, they turn to him for advice.
Some little thing went wrong which they couldn't sort out. They say, what about this? Bob, what is going on? We want to be directed. We need a leader. We want to be directed. And I'm a leader. I'm hopeless. All I can do is suggest a few things and, you know, feed them occasionally. It's like a child. But I think the more miles they sail, the more familiar with their own capabilities they'll become. And then they may make a decision.
It has been decided that no race will take place between here and Melville Island. There will be no competition, and it is the intention of all the crews to remain sailing as close together as a fleet as possible.
But I think you could do the same thing by racing and going for it anywhere. There's no muscle. I haven't seen any muscle out here. I haven't seen any inspired daily performance. I haven't seen anything.
You're talking about competition. Well, if we want to compete, really compete, you know, with a bit of muscle, you know, like the good old stereotypical male, we can really do that. But as far as I'm concerned, that's not as challenging as staying together as a fleet.
You've got your first ocean crossing. And if this is the attitude I see, it's unbelievable. It's like a School of Arts meeting.
We all came here because we believed in you. And I think all we ask now is that you accept what we say and believe in us. And I think that way we can all work together and it'll be a big success. I really do.
This is Scared Day 38. Begins. The moment of truth strikes at noon today. For 18 adventurers sailing through Indonesia to Australia in a fleet of small outrigger canoes stop. Their next stop is 248 miles away southeast to Melville Island. Many of the crews still are not confident navigators. Stop. Despite the general apprehension, crews met yesterday to vote against directional assistance from the support ship Allegrius, whose role will only be to stand by for an emergency. Stop.
But Jacun is not an ocean-going craft, it's not even a sea-going craft. It's a very close inshore coastal fishing craft. It's not a migrant craft, it's lunacy, it's an open boat. It's very difficult to describe the feeling of being out in an ocean in a very small open boat. Nobody actually wants to be on their own. And in an open boat, you're not only very, very small, you're extremely vulnerable.
Late that evening, the first disaster strikes. The New Zealand boat is crippled when it cracks its bamboo struts.
I suppose this could be a considered emergency because they're not going to get anywhere independently without a sail. Squall coming up, and it'll be here probably within about 10 minutes. Quite a big one.
For the captain of the Allegrius, this weather seems rougher than any on their voyage.
50 knots. Lead 50 knots. You just talking anything with struts so far? Oh, yes. What chance of the contact by the time it is?
All around the little outrigger canoes, a gale-force wind is blowing. The team on the mothership keeps an anxious eye out for the scattered fleet of Jacuns.
Some of them are still sailing out there. We've had wind gusting at 50 miles an hour. And they've still got their sails on, like they've just blown the bamboos to pieces. It's a terrible storm.
Out in the storm, the tiny boats are being ripped apart.
We've got to go out and pull in the wreckage and set up a workshop on the after deck and repair as much as we can the damage and keep them going.
5 boats had broken bamboos, 4 boats were left sailing at sunrise. All those boats had to go to Allegrius for spares, completely destroyed our idea about sailing independently.
It's our 4th day. We're all really exhausted. And poor old Ina, she's the one that suffers the most. She's got a problem now, she can't catch her breath. I think it's just exhaustion.
We're in Australian waters at last, but tide, the wind, it's all against us.
Half the people that cross the Arafura Sea couldn't navigate their way out of a wet paper bag, let alone across the Arafura Sea. And that's one of the reasons we needed to steer.
I was on the helm and I fell asleep, even though there were big waves and lots of wind around, and Neil fell asleep bailing. We were both so exhausted.
It's the 4th night of the crossing, and they need Allegrius like a mother. It was almost like climbing back into the womb. The people were so tired, the crews, tired and wet and hungry. To give them all 2 or 3 hours sleep, at least it would help them a little bit, because they have to go on tomorrow morning.
But at dawn, the crews discover that the Australian team is missing. They've taken off on their own, sailing solo towards Melville Island, Australia.
When we sailed up to Allegrius and everybody was tied on, we just couldn't hack it. We just didn't want to be that dependent.
We've decided that if we're going to sail to Australia, we're going to sail
There's no point in sailing to Australia if you're going to be towed.
The 8 remaining crews have no idea whether their friends have survived or not. They can only press on, and soon they get their first sight of Australian soil, Melville Island. Although concerned about the missing boat, they're happy to celebrate their own safe arrival with the original migrants to this land, the Aborigines. But the Australian team has yet to show up, and prospects look gloomier with every passing hour. After a 2-day search, the wreckage is spotted by airplane. The team is safe on tiny Bathurst Island, but their jukung and their hopes are dashed.
I've never experienced this before. Not able really to move much at all. And there's that boat that's done so well for us, breaking up on the beach. I don't feel I've got the strength to do anything about it. Seems a shame to be so close and not to complete the trip. The boat that didn't make it, I don't know.
Alat-alatnya dulu siapkan, pecah keluar supaya bisa keluar.
We couldn't do anything,
Of course not 2 people and exhausted.
Yeah.
Shoot.
And everything just turned into a nightmare for us, you know?
And so they end their journey as they set out. 9 jakungs, a fleet of nations, approaching the beach of Darwin, mainland Australia, 1,400 miles from the tiny coastline villages of Bali.
Where's that drink? Yeah, quick. All right. Hey, Ma, you see that old man and your brother, eh? Yeah. Would you do it again?
Yeah. And I would do it better. I wouldn't get all those things.
The best thing of the voyage? The feeling with the group. Everyone kind for me. Yeah. Always. Because my English not so good. Everybody kind. Thank you.
And so, after 50 days, the great Jakung race is over. Perhaps it wasn't really a race. It certainly wasn't what Bob Hobman expected. But for all that, there are no losers here.
It's a triumph for everybody. It's a triumph for the group, the International Togetherness group, and it's a triumph for me. I'm happy everybody's safe.
Coming up next,